Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. I'm Steve Wiss. I'm with Jonathan Fordugba, and another week of action's gone by up there in Norway and Sweden and in Europe. Jonathan, I'm sure you've been following the results and the action with bated breath. How's it going?
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Yes, welcome back to the Nordic Football Podcast. I'm doing well, and it's been an interesting week. Quite a long week. I feel like quite a lot has happened in both Norway and Sweden. There's been different developments. Obviously, we had European football. We did have an interesting week in Sweden and Norway. And we also had two bonus pods last week for you on Patreon, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. One of them was midweek round, and we had a good success rate, 50%. Obviously, we predictions to the matches. And we also had another one at the weekend just gone as well. But we're going to start, I think we're going to start in Sweden this week. Am I right in saying, Steve?
Yeah, we are. I think Europe matches and then into Sweden, I think we're going to do.
Yeah. But the first thing we are going to do is just go straight into a listener question, because we always ask every Monday, if you have a listener question, send it in. And we did have one well before Monday, in fact. So we're going to get right onto it. It's from Max Graves at Max Graves 91. He asks, Stephen, I just think it's a good place to start, just because it's always nice to have a mutual Sweden-Norway discussion. He said, I'm a massive fan of the podcast. I've been following the Danish Superliga, and your podcast has also got me following the Allsvenskan and Eliteserien. Question for the pod: who would you recommend supporting in both of these leagues? I'm a Spurs fan. Who would you recommend in Allsvenskan and Eliteserien? I'm not a glory hunter. I fancy the underdog, who are more focused on bringing through talent than buying. So academy talent more than buying. So first question there: who are the Spurs of Sweden and Norway? Steve, you going to start you off?
Yeah,
who are the Spurs of the Eliteserien?
It's a tough one. I don't really think there is a Spurs in Norway. We were chatting about this before we started the pod. I think that the two closest teams I can come to that is probably Vålerenga or Lillestrøm. Both have not won a title for decades. Vålerenga's case, I'm not even sure the last time they actually won a trophy, but they have won trophies obviously before. And I don't think either side are necessarily bottlers, but I think whenever they've there's been the odd season they might have looked like getting into a title race, or expectations were high and it hasn't happened. So that's sort of probably the two closest Spurs comparisons I can come with. In terms of a team to support, he likes sort of local talent, homegrown talent. It might be not a bad time to get on the Tromsø bandwagon, because this moment in time they're being overshadowed by their big brother. I mean, there's kind of a Spurs comparison there. Arsenal have done that several times in the last couple of decades, haven't they? Not so much maybe in recent times, but you know what I mean. So I think Tromsø would be an interesting one to support, because they do. Because just where they're located, you tend to get a lot of sort of locally grown players in there. But Vålerenga or Lillestrøm could be one to look at as well.
Yeah, just before we get angry text messages from Lillestrøm and Vålerenga fans, Lillestrøm have actually won the title 5 times in their history, but the most recent one was in 1989. They won the Norwegian Cup as well in 2017. On the European scale, they got to the UEFA Intertoto Cup runners-up in 2006, but that's probably about it. Runners-up of the Royal League 2006 as well. But yeah, 5-time title winners there. And Vålerenga, I was actually quite surprised to learn that Vålerenga have only won the league 5 times themselves as well. Most recent title was 2005, and they're 4-time Norwegian Cup winners, but they haven't won the cup since 2008. So I suppose maybe Vålerenga will have the advantage there, wouldn't they, Steve, being that they're based in the capital, Oslo?
Yeah, Lillestrøm obviously not too far from the capital either. And at the end of the day, if you're going to be the Spurs of Norway, it's not the worst sort of comparison, is it? There's I'm not even going to mention a team, a derogatory term, but you don't want to be like the Wigan of Norway, do you? Sort of thing, along those sort of lines. So it's not the end of the earth being the Spurs of Norway.
Yeah, and I think my answer, Max, would be, I thought about this for a while. I think Hammarby are probably the most similar to Spurs. I think they've got that kind of, no disrespect to Spurs, but they got that kind of flaky reputation. Maybe it's quite funny that we automatically assume that Spurs means bottling it, didn't it, Steve? I think you said that as well.
Just use the worst comparison ever there, by the way. I think Wigan have actually won a trophy more recently than Spurs have.
Yeah, I was going to say. You're disrespecting Wigan there, but no, Hammarby I would choose because they're based in Stockholm. They've got more sort of successful / illustrious rivals in the same sort of city as them. Obviously, Spurs have got Arsenal and maybe Chelsea, although they might argue their place in that, in that hierarchy. But of course, they are their sort of big rivals. West Ham as well, maybe. And in Stockholm, Hammarby have got obviously Djurgården and AIK, who are the kind of two other big boys that kind of look down on Hammarby a little bit. So I think that's probably where Spurs' place would be in terms of a similar club. Also, Hammarby have that reputation simply because they've only won the Allsvenskan once in their entire history, 2001. And that's why this season is such a big season for them. They've been doing such a good job this year. But they are, unfortunately, sorry to say this, Max, or any other Spurs fan, but they have been a little bit Spursy in recent rounds. The form's massively tailed off. They could be running away with the title this season, to be honest. Some of the points they've dropped points again this weekend, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, only one win in their entire history and only one Swedish Cup win as well in 2021. So yeah, it's unfortunately Hammarby fans, or unfortunately Spurs fans, I'm gonna have to liken you up. I mean, Hammarby were formed in 1889, and their recent 1915 in terms of as a football department, but they've got a long and proud history. So to only have won a title once is quite big, considering they've got a massive fan base, which Spurs do as well. Spurs are quite a popular club, and so were Hammarby. Their attendance tonight, I think, was around. I think their average attendance this season is in the 20,000s or so. So that's, which is really high for Sweden. So that would be my team. Hammarby would be the team I think you might want to look at supporting. In terms of academy talent, before we just move on that one as well, I thought about this for quite a while. One thing I would say, Max and Steve as well, and to any listener, probably I'd say that Swedish clubs are really good at developing talent. So it was quite hard to pick like one team with a good academy. In England, Manchester United have that famous.
I know who you're going to pick here.
Manchester United have that famous proud record, obviously, of consecutive, academy players playing in their first team for a successful period of so many years. Chelsea probably have the best modern day academy in England. There's other clubs that do really good youth development, don't they, in England, that you could name? But in Sweden, I think there's so many that it's actually hard to pick one and say, yeah, they're the team that does youth development. I think that IFK Göteborg have a really, really good academy, but they're not kind of like a small club, are they? You mentioned sort of a team that are not the favourites or whatever. IFK are a massive club in Sweden, one of the biggest historically in terms of success. Malmö have an incredible academy. I think they bring through really good talent. Arme Hodzic, they just showed, they sold to Sheffield United a massive price. He's a product of their academy. They've had so many. Hugo Larsson, the big one at the moment. It's really hard. I think Häcken have a good academy. They've had that business model's kind of been built around the Gothia Cup, and they've been able to invest in that and really sort of push that and bring through youth players. But I don't think they're renowned for having like top academy talents that have gone on to huge successes. So I think it's a really tough one. AIK have got a great academy. They sold a lot of players from their academy.
Who doesn't have a good academy?
If you wanted to widen your horizons a little bit and look down the divisions, I think Bromma-Poikana would probably be the one that most people in Sweden would talk about if you were going to say like a really good academy team. So if you were looking for a club to support and you wanted to dip down the divisions a little bit, Bromma-Poikana, I think, would probably be the one. They're arguably the best academy in Sweden. We did have an episode with their former head coach, Sean Constable, about 2 years ago. If you go back in the archives, you can listen to that. And we talk about Bromma-Poikana. Obviously, Dejan Kulusevski, who's at Spurs, by the way, came from Bromma-Poikana. So there's a little tie-in for you there. So maybe it's all coming together for you there, Max, maybe. But yeah, let us know if you do choose a team. And I quite enjoy these. So if you do have any other listeners, if you support a team and you want us to sort of compare them to a team in Sweden or Norway, get you into the leagues, then do let us know. Steve, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Who did you think I was going to say?
Oh, Häcken all day.
Yeah.
I thought you would say. But Bromma-Poikana are a good shout for a lower league team.
Yeah, and if you want to go really hipster, then I'd say Örgryte. For me, they're one of the best academies in Sweden over the sort of past 10 years. They've produced some really good players. Some of them haven't actually gone on to their successes, but in terms of a club that produces talent, I think Örgryte are quite strong as well. But there's so many. That's the thing in Sweden. I mean, you can even look at Hammarby. You got the likes of Swedberg who've gone on this season alone. So it's quite hard. I think Swedish clubs are good at producing talent partly because they have to. So but I think Bromma-Poiken are probably the one you'd look at.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the European matches last week, and the teams that were involved in Norway and Sweden. Bodø/Glimt drew 1-1 away to PSV Eindhoven. Molde drew 0-0 against Ghent. Djurgården also in the same group, 0-0 draw away to Shamrock Rovers. Malmo lost at home to Braga 2-0. There were several results involving Danish sides. Midtjylland lost, I think, to Sturm Graz 1-0. Copenhagen lost in the Champions League to Dortmund. Silkeborg, I'm not actually sure how they did. You were going to update me on that result, I think, Jonathan. And HJK Helsinki couldn't be a Nordic football podcast without a bit of a Finland talk. They lost 2-0 at home to Real Betis, and they travel to Rome this week to take on Jose Mourinho's Roma. So we'll wish them the very best of luck there.
Yeah, and just to let you know on that one, Steve, Silkeborg lost against, I think they lost against, was it Anderlecht?
Right.
So, yeah, they lost 1-0. 1-0 away at Anderlecht.
West Ham next.
Yeah, the big one in Europe this week for us is the Classico, isn't it? It's the Norway Sweden Classico, Djurgården Molde. I think that's the only place to start, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Group F, the game we've been looking forward to in the Conference League. And just to sort of talk about the group itself, everyone's on 1 point. Djurgården drew with Shamrock Rovers away 0-0, and Ghent Molde was 0-0 as well. So let's start with that game. Steve, I don't know if you caught some of the Molde Ghent game at all, but Molde in general are looking quite strong, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, both matches were 0-0 in the group. This was I thought they would actually beat Ghent, but and they were the better team. But it was one of those. Ghent actually defended quite well. I thought, for me, the best player on the pitch was the big Kenyan, Joseph Akumu. I thought he had a really good game. But in general, Ghent, I thought, had a solid game plan. Molde probably should have won it. They'll look back and think, oh, we should have won that game. But at least they haven't lost it. And, Ghent on paper, I suppose, they might feel the toughest test of the group. So it was a very low-scoring night in that group. And let's see how these next two matches go on Thursday evening. And someone actually asked me to do a betting preview for this game, and I did a bunch of research and stuff, and I actually had to turn it down because I find this a really impossible match to predict. I think it's so hard. There's no edge either way. I mean, you can make a case for either side, types of goals and everything like that. So I think it's an absolutely intriguing contest. But fundamentally, I think they say Molde played quite well last week, but they were at home, and they often play well at home there. But Ghent defended well. Yeah,
and in Ireland, the game between Shamrock Rovers and Djurgården finished 0-0. It was a fairly evenly matched game in terms of the XG. Shamrock Rovers 0.38 versus Djurgården's 0.81 according to FootMob. From my point of view, I'm not going to lie. I thought it was quite a boring match in terms of entertainment. Didn't think it was the greatest sort of showing of Djurgården on the global stage, considering the game was even on broadcast in England on BT Sport. So it was a real opportunity for, I suppose, a team like Djurgården to maybe show what they can do. Didn't think they really achieved that. So this game will be an interesting one as well. I think it is being broadcast on BT, but maybe on their website this game. So I don't know if it's on their main channels. But it'll be a massive match. They've just played the Stockholm derby, which we will talk about shortly. And they're going quite well in the title race. I've got a feeling Molde might win it. Don't know, just from some of the games I've seen in Molde this season, I feel like their quality is maybe slightly above Allsvenskan in terms of how they've performed. But I think Djurgården at home, I mentioned it on last week's show, I think Djurgården are very, very strong at home. They've got really good fans, and I think they'll be really, really up for it, especially first game in Europe for so long. So I think I could probably see this ending in a draw, if I'm honest, or maybe a narrow Molde win. But I think Djurgården haven't looked amazing in the recent weeks. We'll talk about that in a minute. I don't know if the 2 games a week might be catching up with them, But I think it'll be an exciting match.
I think it's going to be a match where neither team's going to want to lose it. And I could honestly, I could see a 0-0 again. If it was, I mean, Djurgården have had 2 straight 0-0s. So they're obviously defending quite well at the moment. And you're right, the game against Shamrock was very boring. Probably best remembered for some of the chants from the home fans, really, that you might have seen floating around Twitter. But I think I would lean Molde slightly if I had to, but I can't be sure because I think the Tele2 Arena is going to be rocking for this one. It's going to be, the fans are going to be really right behind them, and I think Molde do have a bit more quality about them, but Djurgården are going to give it absolutely everything. I think it's such a tough game to predict, and it's an intriguing clash.
So your prediction's 0-0?
Yeah. I think I'm going to go draw and 0-0. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go 1-1 draw. I think we both think it'll be a draw, and then it's Ghent against Shamrock as well. So moving on, obviously, Akuma, you mentioned there, the big Kenyan, formerly of Elfsborg, someone I used to rave about on this very podcast before he moved on. We've also got Silkeborg West Ham. That's quite a big game in the Conference League, and I know you've mentioned some of the other ties. The other team to keep an eye out for in terms of Sweden, Steve, before we move on to domestic matters, Union Saint-Gilloise will play Malmo. We talked about Malmo Braga in the midweek preview pod on Patreon, and it went the way we predicted it. Obviously, Braga got a comfortable win, 2-0 win there, and Malmo obviously bottom of the group at this moment in time. They've still got Saint-Gilloise and Union Berlin to play, so big game for Malmo there. They need to sort of maybe get something from that game against Union Saint-Gilloise, but I think they will find that tough again. Glimt Zurich. Don't know if you've got maybe a quick prediction on that, Steve.
Yeah, Glimt should have too much for Zurich. I've looked at Zurich's form; it's horrendous. They've lost 6 of their first 8 games as defending champions in the league, and we know Glimt are really strong at home in Europe on their own patch. So I think this is they actually played really well last week against PSV, who I was disappointed with, I must say. But I think Glimt arguably were the better team in some respects in Holland. So I would fully expect them to get the 3 points against Zurich at home.
Fantastic stuff, and I think that pretty much rounds it up. We can move on to domestic matters now if you.
Yes, absolutely, Jonathan. Yes, we're going to start in Sweden this week, and I just briefly mentioned the result of the Stockholm derby. Always a spoiler, aren't I? But yeah, it was a 0-0 draw between Hammarby and Djurgården. 2 teams were fighting for the title. What did you make of this one then, Jonathan?
0-0. Not the best of games in my opinion. I don't think it was the classic in terms of the Stockholm derby. Hammarby went into it. Obviously, there's the Djurgården and the ghost everyone always talks about. I think we maybe start talking about the Hammarby ghost because I think it's been a while now for them in Stockholm derbies. I think they haven't had a greatest of runs of this team. You might have the head-to-heads in front of you. But yes, in terms of the game itself, Djurgården expected goals was 0.29 according to our partners Y-Scout. Hammarby's was 1.4. They hit the post. Nahir Basara went a little bit closer. They had the ball in the net as well, but it was disallowed. And yeah, all in all, I didn't think it was an amazing game, to be honest. It had the predictable kind of start with the flares and, the kind of everything that you always get. The tifos was really, really impressive. It's the sort of game that you really, I always say, if you can get to a Stockholm derby in your lifetime, it's probably worth going. Really great atmosphere as usual. Both sets of fans, don't like each other. I didn't mention in the last Stockholm derby some weeks ago that there was some fights broke out, didn't they? It went viral on Twitter. People fighting in the stands, AIK and Diff fans, I think it was. And there was several arrests and things like that. But this one was, there's always a little bit of beef between these sort of Stockholm teams. But yeah, in the end, it kind of just ended in a draw that doesn't really help either team. There was a massive issue with, and the goalkeeper, Oliver Dovin, was called back into the team. Blažević was dropped, but unfortunately for Dovin, he got a really bad injury, it looks like. I really rate him as a good young goalkeeper. So unfortunately he had to leave, and he left the field in tears, in fact. That was real disappointment in the derby. But yeah, overall, Hammarby were screaming about a penalty that they felt should have maybe been given. And, the game really was a kind of came down to a lot of decisions, if you know what I mean. Hammarby were good in the first 20 minutes. Djurgården had little spells where they maybe tried to press and, did what they could. I think Edvin Kurtulus made a couple of errors that nearly led to big chances for Diff. But yeah, in the end, no one really did much, to be honest, and it ended in a draw.
Yeah, incredible week, actually. Just one of the top 8 in Allsvenskan won this round, and it almost feels like the sort of match neither wanted to lose. You would say that Hammarby they stay in the title race, like with that draw. They're certainly not out of it. They're only 5 points from the top. And you mentioned this head-to-head. Actually, this is probably the head-to-head which is starting to swing towards Djurgården in recent times. They are unbeaten in the last 5 league games against Hammarby now, which that's got to be progress, isn't it, for them in one of these in these Stockholm derbies. So fair play to Djurgården there, and on the back of an away trip in Europe, I suppose. I mean, for them, they've got to be the more happy with the point.
I think they will be. Yeah, I think Hammarby really disappointed. I think there was a real feeling that they maybe should have won this game, and I think that's probably why they were complaining a little bit after the match as well. I think deep down they're kind of kicking themselves. Don't forget, obviously, Djurgården missing some players. Victor Edvardsson missed this match. He was suspended as well, so that's a big blow. I mean, Edvardsson, for all I've been a little bit critical of him this season, he's still been a big player for them. So him not playing was I think quite a big thing. And yeah, there was a sort of dodgy offside decision. There's been a few dodgy decisions actually this last couple of rounds in Allsvenskan. I'm not going to say I miss VAR, but I think some of them would have definitely gone to VAR. There was a complaint about an offside goal maybe that was given offside. So, Martí Cifuentes said he's really disappointed with just 1 point. We started very well. We had 2 clear chances. He said, I don't know how Jeppy's goal was offside as well. And a point does not feel good. The players are disappointed. So that sums it up. And yeah, of course, Jeppe Andersson's goal was, like I said, allowed for offside. Saidi came out and said it was 100% a goal. And there was also a potential penalty for a foul on Berisha from Marcus Danielsson. So yeah, definitely, I think Djurgården will be the happier. But I'm just wondering with Djurgården, are they just sort of starting to creak it a little bit when they kind of need to, if they were playing once a week, I get the feeling they might have, taken more points. And, I asked this evening, does anybody want to win Allsvenskan at the moment? Because everybody seems to be dropping points. And I just feel like Djurgården, maybe this European run might stretch their squad to the max.
It's certainly a draw which would have pleased several teams. IK, if they'd beaten Varberg, would have moved into 3rd place. I actually watched that game against an incredibly physical Varberg side, I must say, and they couldn't handle them. And Varberg beat them 2-0. And then, obviously, the doors open for Häcken, who we actually said in our preview show, the weekend preview show on Patreon, this was always going to be a tough game at Kalmar, and they got themselves a 1-1 draw. I watched this game as well on Monday evening, and I thought it was a really good match, actually. Cracking game of football. Positives for both sides, I thought, in this one. But again, do Häcken look back on this game and think, what a chance we had to go what would be 3 points clear?
To be honest, I don't think they'll kick themselves. And my reasoning for that is because I think Kalmar are such a good team. I think they're a tough place to go. They've got one of the best defensive records in Allsvenskan. They've only conceded 18 goals all season. Djurgården is the only team I think in the league that's got better defense. So I think you could say, yeah, the team that's good in the league should maybe nick the points there. But if you look at it, Kalmar have beaten Malmö. Kalmar have beaten Malmö in recent weeks. Beat them away from home. They've beaten IFK Göteborg. Obviously, they've beaten ARK at home. They've beaten Elfsborg at home. They've beaten Djurgården at home. They've beaten Hammarby at home. So Kalmar is not an easy place to go by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that they might actually look back on this as maybe a good point. It was interesting after the match. Henrik Rydström came out and said he thinks Häcken will win Allsvenskan. That's how praiseworthy he was about Häcken. After the game, he said he doesn't think that there's a better team that his side have played this season, and he has put his name. He's put his prediction on the table and said that he thinks they will go on and win the league. He said that they can attack from different ways, they can score goals from all different areas, and he said that their defense has improved massively and they're a lot more resilient. So I think it was, for me, that's quite big praise from Henrik Rydström. I don't know if, I mean, that's not even mind games because it's not like he said it before the game. But he said, if I have to think about have we faced a better team, the answer is no. So there you go. That's Henrik Rydström's prediction. And I think that, like I say, I think Kalmar have been a good side this season. If you look at the table, they're comfortably kind of sixth place now. In the media, I predicted they'd have a decent season this year. I said that they will continue. I think the media predicted them in 8th. I think I did indeed predict them to finish 6th. I'm not saying that that's where they're going to finish, but I think that's where they were last season. And that's where I think they'll probably finish this season. So I don't think it's too unexpected in terms of how they're doing. I think they're under Rydström. They're a very solid side. Obviously, Netterberg scored a goal. Good finish from 20 yards, just outside the box, a low finish. And then, Hakan got back into it. Tobias Sana, the former IFK Göteborg man, he popped up with a goal. And that could prove to be a vital point come the end of this season.
Yeah, do you know what? I watched this game, and first half I thought Kalmar were well worthy of their lead, and they might have even got a second goal. And I was thinking, this is Häcken struggling a bit here. And then, like the first sort of 5 minutes, the second half, 10 minutes, the second half, I just noticed they were all over Kalmar. I'm like, what on earth has happened here? And there was guys popping up on the field. I'm like, where have you come from? And I actually thought he must have made some substitutions here. To be fair, I was more focusing on the IFK Gothenburg game, but there was no changes made. I think what happened was he just switched around a few players' positions. Like Sadiq came up on the right wing, and he looked way more dangerous there. And he got the cross came in for Sana's finish. And Häcken showed me something here. They showed me they got a backbone. They came from behind it, get themselves a point. And you know what? There was a period where they were in the ascendancy. I think till probably about the 70th minute, and then it came into like a free for all where it was end to end action. Both teams could have won it. There was some goalkeepers got involved, some last ditch tackling, all sorts of things were going on. So it was. I don't know how anyone who was betting on over 2.5 goals for this game can feel very shortchanged. It should have gone over, but I thought it was a tremendous game, and I think there was a lot of positives for Häcken and Kalmar. Just a couple of questions that we've got here. We've got Wasson, of course. Thank you very much for your question. Have Kalmar now proved themselves that they're a contender for the European spots? And there was also a question about Häcken, about are they now showing that they're wobbling a bit? So I don't know what your opinion is on both there.
I don't think Häcken will get in the European spots. That's they're not Häcken. Far off it. They're only 4 points off it.
Oh,
but
Kalmar.
I don't think. Yeah, Kalmar. You asked me, right?
Yeah, Kalmar for the European spots. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they'll get it. They're 4 points off it. I think that Hammarby, Djurgården, and Häcken have got the better, more firepower. And there isn't any further. There aren't any other European spots, are there? I don't think. Top 3.
Yeah, top 3. Yeah.
That from that point of view, I don't think so. They could go close, but I just don't think Hammarby have got good enough players overall. They've got a good squad, but I just don't think they've got enough difference makers in their team. And that's part of the reason that I don't think they won this game today. I just don't think they have that kind of ability to, they don't score that many goals, only 25 goals. We praise their defense, but in terms of goals, they don't score a huge amount. So that's probably going to be their downfall, I think, in terms of getting a European spot. But they're a very good team. Don't get me wrong. Rydström's got them really well drilled. I've praised him many times, as Mr. Wasson will know. And they've also got the best mascot in the league in Ove Peterson, who's my favorite, probably follower on Twitter. But yeah, I don't think they'll get it. And I can't remember what the other question you asked me.
Yeah, history of Russia. His question is: are Häcken wobbling, or have they been found out?
I think neither. I mean, I think neither, because in pre-season I never thought Häcken would challenge for the title. I don't think many people did. So have they been found out? I think that's a bit unfair, because there was nothing to find out really. They're overachieving here. Let's not forget. And in terms of are they wobbling, maybe, but they've had some pretty tough games. I think the only one that you could say they should have won was the Degerfors game. Häcken haven't lost since July, and they've only lost 2 all season. So they're really okay. They've had back-to-back draws, but before that they won 4 straight. They're having a brilliant season, and like I say, Kalmar's not an easy place to go. They've won most other games this season, to be honest. They're not. I don't think they're really necessarily wobbling. I'm massively impressed with Per-Mathias Hogmo and the work he's done at this football club to get them where they are. Riestrom's comments kind of have caught my, raised my eyebrow a little bit. To hear a fellow manager say that does sort of make me think, wow, could this be the year? Because don't forget, we talked about the Spurs of Sweden and Norway. Häcken were formed in 1940, and they've never won a title in their history. This is a provincial side. I can't remember what episode we had when we had their former sporting director on, Steve, and when I interviewed him. That was many years ago now. He's not in that role anymore. But I remember when we had a podcast about it, and I spoke about the whole history of Häcken, and this is a team that's kind of come through the divisions. They're in a small club by any comparison. You could argue they're not even. You could argue they're the fourth biggest club in Gothenburg historically. When you compare them with Gais, who were in the third tier, and Orgrid as well in second tier, and struggling. Even compare them to IFK Göteborg, a massive club. They're well above them now in the table in that sense. Häcken historically are a small club who've built themselves up with the Gothia Cup and some really smart decisions they've made as a football organization. So, when you say wobbling or being found out, this is not their level. This if they win the title, this is like Leicester, in my opinion, winning the Premier League. It's not maybe as unexpected. I know the Premier League is not as the Premier League is much harder to win compared to maybe Allsvenskan, but this is like a massive thing if Häcken win this title. It's huge. Like I say, it'll be the first time in their entire history. So we're potentially witnessing, a once in a lifetime, maybe great experience here for their fans. Yes, they've had a few games recently where they've not been great, but even in August, 3 games ago, beating Varnamo 4-1. Varnamo have had such a great season this year. For Häcken to smash them in that way, I don't think they're wobbling. But in fairness to history of Russia's question, the big game this weekend is going to determine a lot of things, in my opinion. Two of their next 3 games, they've got Hammarby at home and Djurgården away. Now we will really learn about Häcken in this next few weeks, and they've got a tough run in, really tough run in. So there's now we're going to start to learn what is this Häcken made of, really, starting on Saturday against Hammarby.
I think they can take a lot of positives from that second half. Kalmar's a really tough place to go. Got the second best home record in the league. They're only conceded 5 goals at home. And in that second half, Häcken put Kalmar under a lot of pressure. I've not seen Kalmar wobble in a home match like that for a long time. They're usually very much in control of proceedings, but from 45 until like 70, I thought they absolutely battered them. Anyway, so we're going to stay with the Monday night game. There was a shock win in Gothenburg. IFK Gothenburg against Helsingborg. I couldn't believe what I was watching here. I think this is a heck of a turn up for the books, indeed, Jonathan. But a huge 3 points for Helsingborg.
Yeah, massive win. As you mentioned, no one expected it. I thought EFK would win this if you listen to the weekend preview show. You tipped the overs as well, which came in, but the EFK to win was unsuccessful. EFK have been in fantastic form, and maybe it just that form ran out in the end. Obviously they've had some decent results. I know they've had some tough results before that, obviously losing at Kalmar and losing at home to Hammarby. But in general, EFK have won 5 of their last 7 games before this match. So you really got the sense that this would be just kind of almost a walkover for them. But it was not the case. Best I've seen Helsingborg play all season, without doubt. Goal from Musin, Wiedersheim Paul and William Lopel in the last minute. Gustav Norlin equalised in the 39th minute for EFK. Musin's first goal was really good. I mean, Helsingborg were lightning on the counter-attack, looked really lively. I did say on the weekend preview show that Helsingborg have started to look quite good on the counter. They've got, players like Taha Ali and the pace that they can break with. And they do, Musin has looked a good signing from AFC Eskilstuna. I like the look of this kid. He got 2 against Varnamo the week before, and he's now popped up with another one here. He's a good finisher, he looks. And Wiedersheim Paul got in the end of it. There was a massive chance just before that. Taha Ali, I don't know how he's missed it, but Vaughan made an incredible save. And, I was saying it was looking like Helsingborg could be in the lead here. And then seconds later, they took the lead. I was doing the commentary on Twitter. Second half, EFK changed things around. They tried to get back into it, but they just couldn't. Helsingborg defended in numbers. They defended really, really well. They took a few injuries as well. Thomas Rogner got a bit of an injury. Another player got injured, I think, as well. But they held out. They stood firm. And one of the sort of comedy breakaway goals, isn't it? Last minute, the keeper comes up for a header for a corner, made a complete mess of it. Basically, I think it was I can't remember who now. Abdullahi gave the ball away, trying to dribble past two players when there's no keeper and there's no keeper in the goal. They broke away, and Wilhelm Loper, like I say, just dribbled it into an empty net to make it 3-1. And the scenes from the Helsingborg fans were crazy. They got good fans, and they showed their passion. They went mad. And yeah, it's just giving them a lifeline. This is a lifeline for them. I mean, you mentioned Varberg ARK. I'm sure you'll ask me about that in a minute. But that Varberg win against ARK could prove massive for them now, because the gap is now 7 points between Helsingborg in that relegation playoff and Varberg boys, which is, safety. So that extra 3 points for Varberg unexpectedly is huge, because if they'd have lost that game, it would have given Helsingborg a real lifeline. 7 points is still, I suppose, doable, but it's still a big ask to get out of that relegation spot. But that win does lift them out of the relegation automatic. Degerfors are now second bottom, and goal difference keeps Helsingborg just above water. So a massive win. But the thing for Helsingborg is this is the best I've seen them play for a while, and it's been building. They were really unlucky last week against Värnamo with that last minute goal that lost them the game 3-2. The Mjällby game, I remember that match. They weren't that bad, actually. They weren't actually that bad. And they lost to a late goal. They beat GIF Sundsvall the week before that. So this is a good run for Helsingborg and their new management duo. So I think this win will give them massive confidence. But obviously their next game is the big derby, and that is against Malmö, the Skåne derby. So huge game this weekend coming where they'll want to continue this run.
I think they'll beat Malmö. That was a very impressive performance. That was not the performance of a side second bottom. And where on earth have they been hiding that? Because they were easily outclassing IFK today. Everywhere, tactically, they wanted it more. Just everyone. They could have had 4 or 5 goals. I thought the best player for Gothenburg was the goalkeeper. He made 2 incredible saves, one of which was actually on the goal, in fairness. But yeah, if they play like that, and they've got some tough fixtures, Helsingborg, they're going to have to keep playing well. But I think they're going to get the third playoff spot, down there at the bottom. I think there'll be enough to go past Degerfors there. But I mean, well done to them. I've got to be honest. I was really, really impressed, and they've got some exciting attackers. And it's a shame for them that Varberg did win. I say they a shock 2-0 win against IK, and they're just a thug of a team, I think, Varberg, from what I saw, Jonathan. But they just have this knack, don't they? Like I think they're the hardest team to predict in the whole league, Varberg. But they always pop up with a win every now and then when you almost least expect it.
Yeah, I mean, I said about you mentioned Helsingborg got some good players. I think Taha Ali, if he could get some end product, he could play in the Premier League. I mean, some of his dribbling and his ability on the counter attack, his speed and his dribbling is insane. He reminds me a little bit of Callum Hudson-Odoi when Hudson-Odoi was kind of coming through at Chelsea. Very wiry, quite thin. I mean, Hudson-Odoi, one of the best young players I've seen for a long time. Obviously got that Achilles. It blew his Achilles basically, and I think that's really hampered his career to date and not getting many chances at Chelsea. But Taha Ali's got that similar kind of wiry frame and just ability to beat men for fun. I remember being at that Chelsea Malmo when Hudson-Odoi just ripped Malmo to shreds some years ago now. And Taha Ali reminds me of him a little bit, but it's just end product is often lacking. There was some chances here. I mean, he could have walked away with at least 2 goals, to be honest. There was one other chance where just his final product, he should have squared it. It could have been even more goals for Helsingborg. In terms of Varberg, yeah, this was a good game. I think we should really talk about it a little bit because we don't talk about Varberg much. But it was a deserved win. ARK offered not very much in forward areas, 2-0 win. Varberg hit them with a set piece, Tranberg, and then, almost immediately after that got another one. I think the key in this game, Steve, was Johansson going off. When I was watching the first half, I was just thinking Varberg, they've got nothing going forward. They're so poor up front. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do think Simovic is a decent player, holds the ball up well. He got an assist, and I do actually quite like him as someone who just holds the ball up, but they don't get enough bodies around him to help him at all. And I thought Johansson was terrible. He got into some decent situations and just blew it. Very slow receiving. I mean, they had a couple of counter attacks where he just literally took about 5 touches and let everyone get back before he made his decision. But when he came off in the, I think, 66th minute, and they brought on Bowman, I thought the complexion of the game changed a little bit. Philip Cease got his goal. He looks quite a good player, and I thought that Varberg deserved it in the second. You know, when it was 0-0 at half time, you expected maybe to pick it up in the second half and go on from there and win the game. But they couldn't do it, and they barely created anything even in the second half. And Varberg kind of had a lot more of the ball and cut them open. And so I think that this is a massive win for Varberg. Like I say, we don't talk about them a huge amount. I still think they're lacking forward areas, but they are kind of they do play that kind of 5-4-1, just kind of sit back and 4-5-1. Sorry, sometimes, and they have so many bodies back. But I just think they lack a bit in transition at times. I think going and getting numbers forward to attack, they're not very good at it. But they did offer that set piece threat, and that's what got them the first goal really. And they the momentum from there is what carried them to the win.
For me, they're the Stoke of Sweden. They a set piece FC. I mean, they've got a guy with long throws, and he was hurling them into the box, Roy Delap style. And eventually, I think IE just gave away far too many set pieces in this game, and they got punished. But Varberg, they did play quite well in this fixture. IE, there's certain teams in world football that I could never trust them away from home, and IE always fall into that bracket for me. Like they're just not trustworthy on the road, and that's always been their Achilles heel. Apart from that season, they won the league, of course, in recent times. So I think that fundamentally is going to let them down again. We are going to move on. We're going to move on to Malmö. They've got a new manager and they've got a win under their belts this season. They lost against Braga in the Europa League, as we talked about, but a victory at the weekend and a new manager.
Yeah, and I think this could be, is this the turning point for Malmö? That'll be the question. Obviously, they played Norrköping. It's quite funny, actually. I know that Åge Herreda is quite a famous manager in this region. He's got the distinction of being someone who's won the title in almost, I think, every Scandinavian country. Am I right in saying he's won the league in Norway? He's won the league in Sweden with Malmö, of course, in 2014. I think he's won the league am I right in saying in Denmark? Can't remember. I might have to double check that. But he's won the league in at least 3 different countries, I believe. And let me just verify that so I'm not wrong. No. Yes, he's won the league with Brøndby. Yeah, I knew it. I knew I was right. And with Rosenborg, of course. And he left Rosenborg, didn't he, under a bit of a cloud? I remember discussing him last season and the whole LGBT pride thing. Kind of left under a bit of a cloud. And I don't know if that was ever resolved, but he's popped up at Malmö. Obviously, he's also managed internationally, hasn't he? He's managed Denmark and Norway. So hugely experienced manager. And after the terrible run, a terrible run of form from Malmö under Andreas Georgsson, I think, as an interim, I think they decided collectively it's time to get a new interim. And, of course, called up their old manager, Åge Herreda. And I have to say in this game, Steve, it was quite funny witnessing it because it started off kind of, Åge Herreda's face. He looked like, I don't know, he's got a very expressive face. I don't know, I can't really describe it. It's like he's almost got a Simpsons character, sort of a peripheral Simpsons character face. Like I'm trying to think of a sort of character, but really expressive face where, the first 60 minutes he was tearing his hair out. He looked really sad. Chances that Malmö missed, he looked genuinely like he's about to cry or tear his hair out, or, getting really frustrated. He's got a very expressive face. But at the end of the match, he had a massive smile on his face. He looked really happy. He was waving at people in the stands. And Malmö managed to turn the game around. Essentially, Norrköping took the lead early on. Jacob Ortmark with a nice goal, bit of a breakaway finish. But I think that the key here was just some really bad defending from Norrköping. I think Roy Keane, Steve, would probably describe it as sloppy if you were describing the defending in this match, because Norrköping's defending was all over the place. Marco Lund was the embodiment of this match in terms of defending. He had a terrible, terrible game, Steve. I commented on Twitter. He gave away a penalty. I've never seen someone pull so many shirts. I mean, even there was a tweet from Discovery. One of their analysts was saying he was wondering if Marco Lund bet on Malmö to win the match, because he was almost seems like he was desperate to give away a penalty. He eventually did give away a penalty, pulling his shirt back. I think it was Jørgen Berget. Definite penalty. Keith Tellin had the audacity to miss it, Then Zidane got an equaliser, and then Lund made Lund made some terrible defending there, and then he made some terrible defending for the Kiese Tellin's goal. Eventually, Kiese Tellin got his goal 2-1, ball over the top, and he just kind of doesn't do anything. And it was a real shame because Oscar Janssen, who a couple of years ago he was in our team of the season, wasn't he? In our Scandinavian team of the season for Wyscout, he had a magnificent game for Northam. He did everything he could to keep them out, but just really, really bad defending from Lund and others cost Norrköping in this one. I think it wasn't helped by the fact that the balance of the side wasn't great. I don't think they got their forward players into it very well. I generally think with Norrköping, their forwards aren't amazing. Christopher Niemann's got a good goal scoring record, but I think he lacks a bit in physicality. I think some of their other players like Traustason, I just think they lack a bit of speed and a bit of physicality. I think at times they can be quite easy to play through. And I think that's what Malmö did to them, really. I think one of the other keys to this game, Steve, was Kristiansund got an injury. And Zidane was actually dropped by Olga Herrera for this match, which there was a lot of comments and stuff before the game about why has Zidane been dropped. And of course, because of the early injury, he came on after, I think, 27 minutes. And he was actually quite key to them getting back into the match. Zidane, I thought he had a good second half, and obviously got his goal. So, yeah, all in all, a massive win, I think, just in terms of relieving the pressure for Malmö, because they've been in really, really bad form for quite a long time now. And there was a real big sense of relief at the end of the match when they got the win here. I think Norrköping could have offered a little bit more, to be honest, just in terms of this final decision making and things like that. And they've got their new manager. He was quite expressive on the sidelines as well himself. I think Herrera and him look like sort of two uncles that were going at it at various points, pointing at each other and stuff like that. And kind of, both managers seem like not afraid to give their opinions and give their sort of expressive facial expressions. But yeah, Norrköping just couldn't find a way to get their key men involved in the second half, and Malmö pick up a really important win.
Yeah, I've actually just had a look at Kiese Tellin's penalty record, because Malmö have a history of missing penalties, don't they? And I tell you what, for some reason, I don't know what's going around the whole of Europe recently. I've never seen so many penalties missed. It seems all the time there's some crucial spot kicks going on. Why the goalkeepers are suddenly having a great time of it, I don't know. But Kiese Tellin actually has a really good record from the penalty spot. 15 penalties scored and only 5 missed. So you could say it's a bit of a rarity that he didn't get on the score sheet there. But he eventually did, of course, didn't he? 10 minutes later. So, a good win for Malmö. I've got to be honest, I don't see them even getting Europe, though, because I think they're in a brutal Europe. They are facing some tough teams like Union Berlin and Braga. That's going to really tire them out, I think. I don't see them getting in the top 3 myself, Jonathan. I don't know about yourself.
I think they're up against it. They're going to have to go on a really good run. They're still what, 5th? The good thing for them is no one else won this weekend above them. So, they have got themselves a little bit back into it, but I'm not convinced. And, Agaherd is going to have to do a lot of work. They've got a lot of traveling with the European games. So it remains to be seen. They've got a huge game this weekend against Helsingborg. I think it's a big game for Malmö as well, that derby. So I think that's going to be a really good game.
Yeah. So anyway, just moving away from Sweden here for a bit. And there was a time in our early days of Nordic football podcasting where we were getting guests on and things, and you came very close then at that stage to securing a guest interview with the Ostersunds manager, who at the time was Graham Potter, and it was very close, wasn't it? You nearly got an interview with him, and amazing to think now that this man, Graham Potter, former Ostersunds manager, is on a £10 million a year contract at Chelsea. We've discussed him, of course, in the past on this show, and I think you could almost say certainly you kind of saw this coming. Graham Potter at Chelsea. What a story.
Yeah, we have to give a shout out, I think, as the news has been announced, obviously, about him moving from Brighton to Chelsea. Yeah, like you said, I'm kicking myself by that interview that never was. He replied to us. This is going to be like one of the Nordic football podcast annals.
Yeah.
We wrote to Graham Potter, and out of the blue, he replied and said, "Yeah, I can do an interview. I can do a pod like." What was it? I think he said like tomorrow or something, didn't he? And yeah. I don't think we checked the emails for like, I don't think we checked the email, did we? Till like the day after.
I know.
He's like, I'm free tomorrow, this time, and we never. I don't think we checked the email in time. And by the time we replied and said, yeah, when can we reschedule? It was basically never to be done again. That's probably something we're going to kick ourselves and regret forever. But there is somewhere in our Nordic inbox an email from Graham Potter. So I think we need to frame that probably, Stephen.
Graham, if you ever want to come on, Graham, you're most welcome to talk about your time in football at Ostersund's and Brighton and Chelsea.
We need to frame that and cherish it. But it was always, I think, he was destined for a big job. I think that, we've been doing this podcast for a long time, and he's one of the most impressive managers that there's been. I think it's going to be really interesting that he's getting I think this will be the first time he's got a job with like a huge amount of pressure. If you actually look at it, because Ostersund's, there was never really expectations. Even when he was doing so well, there was never like a club. I know that if he had left, then obviously I'm sure one of the big clubs would have approached him. But there was never even a time, was there really, where it was like, oh, Malmo or Djurgården or Häcken or someone is going to go after him or AIK, when really it looked like it should have been quite obvious from very early on. I mean, he won the Swedish Cup before they even the year I think they got promoted. So this is a manager who did unbelievable things in Sweden, really, when you think about it, building them from the fourth tier. Now they're looking like going back-to-back relegations, Ostersund. Then they're close to the bottom of Superettan. And it just shows you how badly they've fallen since he left. I think one thing to say, I think he will be fine under kind of there was a lot of talk about, can he deal with maybe the owners and that, they've got that Clear Lake Capital, haven't they, and that massive investment group that's behind Chelsea now. I think he will be able to handle that, because obviously anyone in Sweden will know that he worked under Daniel Schimberg, who controversial figure he is, and a very demanding man, according to people who know him and who've been on this podcast talking about him. So I think he'll be used to managing under sort of owners with a big ambition. Ostersund's ambition was like to win Allsvenskan, wasn't it? Even when they were in the third tier. So I think he'll be used to working under sort of like a really ambitious football club, but it's just the expectations from fans, I think, will be, Brighton. I always remember when there was that quirky, he didn't like it do you remember that time when Brighton fans booed the team?
It was against Leeds.
Yeah, and he came out and said,
they absolutely battered us as well. It was 0-0 and he booed him off.
And he said, like, people need to realise that this is Brighton, didn't he? I think he had a bit of a spiky comment there and said, you need to realise what you're watching. So it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to that side of it. But a brilliant manager, someone who's got, I'm sure there'll be so much written about him in the next few weeks. But, if you can even go back to us talking about him in 2017 and 2018 and that one, said it then and say it now, but full of ideas. He's a bright mind, really good at working with players. He's really deep on psychology, human interaction, human relations, someone who will really empathize with players. And I'm really fascinated to see how that adapts to sort of the demands at a massive club. Will he get the time? I think Chelsea fans, if they're listening to this, the one thing I'd say, I think he'll have a huge emphasis on their academy. I think Chelsea could be completely different philosophy and team if they let him get enough time to build his club. I think he'll really start. I think he could really make use of that academy, because Chelsea have been, the past 10 years, Chelsea have had the best academy in England, really, in terms of success and track record. I think he'll sort of lean on that and really try and integrate some of those players early. But of course, the demands are to win. So I think that'll be the really interesting part of it. How does he balance that? But I think he really will try and build through the academy, and they've always been really bright in ideas. They've got Kyle McCauley, I think it is as well, the recruitment guy who's come with him all the way from Ostersund. He's brought a lot of his team all the way through with him. So him doing the recruitment there means that maybe Chelsea will start signing, unknown players and things like that. So yeah, good luck to him. And it just shows you that, like I said on Twitter today, I hope that more British managers think about maybe coming out to Sweden or Norway and coaching, because there are some opportunities out here, probably a bit harder now with Brexit, but look at the way his career's gone since then, since thinking outside the box and taking a risk.
Saw someone on Twitter say it's almost like a football manager career, from Leeds Carnegie to Ostersund to Swansea to Brighton and then to Chelsea. I guess my final question, we know 3 years is a long time in football. On the 13th of September 2025, is he still in charge at Chelsea?
I think that's an unfair question. I'm not going to answer that.
Because I would say no. I know the history of that club, and
I'm going to ask you: will the planet still be going in 2025?
That is actually a very good question. That is another very good question.
Let's start there before we worry about Chelsea.
My concern is that I know what Chelsea are like as a football club. And I could certainly see him winning something there. But even if you win things, it doesn't mean you keep your job for that long at Chelsea, does it? So it's a really intriguing one. And
But the thing is, that won't reflect Graham Potter, just like it doesn't reflect Thomas.
No, it doesn't. Exactly, no.
It doesn't really.
It won't be a site on Potter or anything like that. But it's just, I think it's interesting. Are Chelsea going to finally get a really long-term manager or not? I guess is what I was thinking.
If you look at the current owners and what they've done with Tuchel, then you'd say no. But I think the more pertinent question is, can he succeed at Chelsea? And I think the answer is yes. I think he's got everything in his locker to be
win
really top
I think
manager.
He'll win things there. Yeah, I think he will. Yeah. So, well, okay. Well, I think that might have to do for the Swedish section because we're a bit low on time. Degerfors might have to wait for another week. But yes, intriguing stuff as always, Jonathan. And we've still got another section to go. We're going to talk about some Norwegian aspects after the break. So stay with us. Catch you very soon.
Welcome to part 2 of this latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Jonathan Faduba, and I'm joined, as always, by Steve Wiss for part 2. You mentioned before we took a break that we're going to, you're not going to be able to fit in Degerfors, Steve, but I'm actually going to fit them in now. So I'm lucky about that, because I'm just going to say, worst red card I think I've probably ever seen in Allsvenskan. Some refereeing decisions have been pretty poor. I mean, I don't know if you had any poor refereeing decisions in Norway this week, Steve, but just wondered how you feel about that, because I've seen at Football in DK talking a little bit about VAR in Denmark as well. So I just wondered, has there been anything in Norway crazy?
I am not going to criticize referees anymore. If it means I'd rather have bad referees than VAR. I would. I will accept mistakes from referees as long as we don't get that monstrosity of VAR. The Juventus thing on Sunday, for me, that's a final straw. Like, anyone who saw the end to that game is like, that's it. Get rid of this monstrosity. And I will seriously, I'll accept mistakes. The best thing about VAR, no VAR, you can celebrate a goal straight up. Well, or within like 5 or 10 seconds if it's going to be disallowed. I'm sick of that system now. So you know what? I'm not. You're not going to hear me criticize referees much now. If they get a decision wrong, they get a decision wrong. It's this way of life.
This is coming from a man that, if you were to go back to our archives and listen to our VAR debates about 2 years ago, staunchly pro VAR against my anti VAR, staunchly defending it when I was saying that it would kill celebrating. I might even go and get the clip somehow.
You nailed that part. But I mean, look, at the end of the day, of course, we want to try and get the best officials we can in the world, but we've got to accept we're all human and mistakes can be made. So that's life, isn't it? But look, I'd rather get a referee make a mistake and it's an instant decision rather than hang around for like 5 or 6 minutes on VAR for someone being offside by a toenail.
Well, the thing is that you don't, as I've always said, VAR doesn't actually solve anything. It just moves the decision making it just moves human error from referees on the pitch to referees off the pitch. That's the only thing it does. It doesn't actually solve human error. So, if you get a chance to see the Degerfors Mjällby game, I mean, the second yellow card for Noah Eiler of Mjällby is unbelievable. He basically gets sent off he basically gets a second yellow card for telling someone to get up. I mean, he doesn't even touch him. So yeah, craziness. But I also saw Denmark, bit of VAR controversy. But the good thing is, maybe in our league, Steve, we still currently don't have VAR. Although I will be honest, there are times in Sweden where I do think sometimes that some of these offsides could be solved by VAR. But like you say, the sort of waiting around and stuff is give and take, and that money could be better invested, in my opinion, on training the referees a little bit more. But anyway, let's get cracking into this Norway section and see if there were any controversies. But the first place to start really is that massive derby. Now, massive credit to Tromsø on their Twitter account, because they put up a video which I thought was phenomenal yesterday on their Twitter account of the derby, and it was simply titled "North Norway is red and white." If you get a chance, go on Tromsø's Twitter account, have a little look at the video they made. Really captures the atmosphere of the derby in a little 1 minute clip. But Steve, this was the Derby of the North. You did talk about it in last week's show and say it's going to be a big game. And it turned out it did fulfill its billing, didn't it? Tell us all about it.
Tromsø 3, Bodø 2. And this didn't surprise me. I actually said on the Patreon show, didn't I, that I expected Tromsø to get at least a draw out of this game. And they performed. They played really well here. I've got to be honest. They were just too much for Bodø Glimt. A Bodø Glimt side who definitely, I think, were a little bit fatigued after 3 days, over there in PSV in the Europa League. And it wasn't that Glimt played that bad, but the Tromsø were completely at it. The first goal was scored by Lasse Nordas, who is actually on loan from Bodø Glimt. I mean, for me, here we go again. We had this discussion, didn't we, a few weeks ago about the guy on loan, Varnamo from IK. It's an absolute nonsense. I mean, I cannot believe that Glimt let this guy go on loan to Tromsø. Why on earth you would send them there anyway? I don't know. Why would you send someone to your bitterest rivals? Probably because geographically it makes sense, I suppose. But how on earth are they letting him play against them? Like, there's got to be something written in the contract. And if you can't write something in the contract, have a gentleman's agreement, otherwise you don't get the player. But their own player scored the first goal against them. So, I mean, I'll be honest, Nordas, when I've seen him, he can't finish. It's like Tromsø have this thing about the number 9s. They just can't get a reliable number 9 striker. But and Nordas is like the first goal he scored, and he actually took it quite well. So that got him up and running nicely. But they deserve the lead.
Maybe they loaned him on purpose if he can't finish.
Maybe
that was the thinking.
Yeah, he celebrated his goal as well. I couldn't believe that. I mean, this is a discussion for a later date, isn't it? But the irony behind.
To be fair, it was subdued celebrate. He didn't go mad.
He didn't go mad, but he celebrated enough, didn't he?
Mm.
I mean, he wouldn't get me. Look, if you check out Andy Delors' celebration for Nice against Ajax at the weekend, he scored an overhead kick, and you'd think it was in a mausoleum. But anyway, yeah, got the lead, and then August Mikkelsen scored a fantastic second goal, free kick. For me, unsavable for me. A beautiful free kick, and Mikkelsen was the key man in this match. In the first half, he ran the show, and he actually came off injured at the break, but he still got the 3 bonus points on fantasy, deservedly so. He was the man of the match for me, even though he only played one half. And then Catalano got a third goal for Tromsø. It was a bit of a nothing second half in a way, really. Tromsø generally managed their league quite well. And then Glimt got 2 late goals. And having backed Tromsø on the handicap, I was thinking, this don't do me a ham cam again like last week. I think if Tromsø had lost this match, I think I'd have resigned from betting. I really would. But thankfully, it was only like 2 or 3 minutes were added on. But it was probably a bit of a flattering score on Glimt in the end. They probably deserved a goal, but Tromsø just gave it absolutely everything. First time they've beaten Glimt, their bitter rivals, in I think 7 attempts. And I've got to tip my hat to Tromsø. They really started to, for a lot of the season, they were struggling, but they've really started to get some good results recently, up to 30 points now and 7th place. So they're going to be absolutely fine this year.
Yeah, and even, I don't know how many Kitalanas there are in Norway, Steve, but they seem to be everywhere. But even Kitalana's goal was quite a nice quality strike. Steve, I did see one comment on Twitter, which was about Kjetil Knutsen's team selection and maybe his tendency to stick with the same 11. Now, you can address that later, but I want to ask you about Kjetil Knutsen now because he's been strongly linked with the Brighton job. Obviously vacated by Graham Potter, and a lot of people on Twitter have said he should be the man they go for. And I think he was, at least as of a couple of days ago, the bookmaker's favourite. I don't know if that's since changed, but off air, I said to you, Steve, let's dig into the archives and find our clips about what you said about Knutsen, because I can't remember what episode it was, but you gave a really good sort of we spoke about him in some detail. I remember the episode we talked about, like the New York Times article, didn't we? And all the sort of furore around him, but I haven't been able to find it. I was still looking. So for those Brighton fans who might be listening in, wanting to know a bit of Kjetil Knutsen, I'm sure I know you've said this many times anyway, but I just want to ask you, what kind of manager is he? And have you read anything about the Brighton rumours? And where are we on that at this moment in time? Has it been talked about at all in Norway?
Yeah, the whole last year and a half have been talks with Kjetil Knutsen linked with a move away, and rightly so. He's been fantastic for them, and what sort of style would he bring to, say, Brighton? I think he would bring quite a positive style of football to the club. He's certainly not a defensive manager, but he's adapted over the years from what I would call sort of this counter-attacking high press system to a more possession-based plan if needed. Just watch them against PSV as well on Thursday. Actually proved Knutsen that he can set up a team defensively as well. It was the first time I've really noticed it, to be honest with you, Jonathan. But it was a really good game plan he had to restrict PSV at times, something you don't always associate with the Bodø/Glimt side. So I think he's actually improving as a manager, as the years go by. So this is someone that's developed him and his coaching team have improved players that have come to the club, whether they be young signings or coming through their own academy. So he's not afraid of doing stuff like that. And to be honest, I actually think he would be quite a good fit at Brighton. And I do know he's one of the favourites for the job along. I think the guy from Sassuolo was the favourite last time. Is it De Zerbi or someone like that? I've seen them play. They look quite a good side as well. And I say Kjetil Knutsen, he's a very, very good manager. And I think it would be a great addition to the Premier League if Brighton were willing to take the gamble and go for it, because I think it always would be a gamble, because to bring in a foreign manager who'd never managed in the Premier League before. But I think
in terms of achievements, like what's he? I mean, I know most listeners will already know this, but what's he achieved in the last 2 years? And obviously, maybe the 100-point season, nearly went unbeaten, didn't he, for a season? Like, just recap a little bit of that as well.
Well, what he achieved first and foremost was a very unexpected second place with very limited resources, and then won the league. I think he only had one defeat, and with God knows how many points. Was it 80-something points and over 100 goals?
81 points, 103 goals in a 30-game season.
I mean, records
one defeat.
And then last year retained the title in difficult circumstances when they had to accommodate Europe and all sorts of extra stuff. So that was strong enough. And then a fantastic run in Europe, of course, to the quarterfinals of the Europa Conference League. Had some sensational wins along the way. Hammered Jose Mourinho's Roma 6-1, and also beat them at home in the knockouts before eventually Mourinho got his revenge in Rome. But they've caught the eye on the European stage several times. And, you got to say he's done it really with certainly, it's been a good squad that he's developed himself, but it's not been an all-star lineup. He's got the absolute most out of pretty much every player. And I think that's all you can ask of in a manager sometimes.
Yeah, and on top of that, he's been pretty good at development of players and selling them on for a profit, hasn't he? Which is kind of the Brighton model in a way. I mean, Definitely. Just tell us about some of the players that he's developed as well that have gone on. I know Patrick Berg's returned, but he's just one example, isn't he? Give us a few more others.
Jens Petter Hage, Erik Botheim. I'm just looking through. Victor Boniface, even this season, of course, moved on. And they unfortunately lost a couple of players for freeze as well. But, it's one of those where Håkon Evjen as well, of course, springs to mind. So they have sold players for quite a big profit in the last couple of years. And, I suppose that is part of the Brighton model, isn't it? Get your player in, coach them higher, and then sell them on for a profit. So I think he'd be an interesting fit there. And I do wonder, I think at the end of the season, maybe Knutsen might just look at his future and think, if certain jobs are still available, maybe he might want to move on. But he's very committed to Bodø/Glimt. We thought he was going to leave last winter, and it didn't happen. And I think he'll want to. Well, let's just see how they get on this European campaign. I think he's really keen to see it through. But sometimes certain offers are just irresistible, right?
There you go. Good answer. I hope that clears anything up for Brighton fans. You can tweet us at Nordic Footpod if you want to give your reaction or any questions for the podcast. As always, we will get as many as we can on the show. But defeat for Glimt. And they now will go to Europe like we've discussed in part one and see where they can go. At this moment in time, Steve, we've still got Molde top of the league. I know we discussed them in a lot of detail last week. So if you haven't listened to that discussion, go back last week's show and have a little listen. Norway was part one of last week's show, I think, and we talked in detail about Molde They're still 10 points clear at this moment in time now with 8 games to go. But we're going to move on to
just on Molde.
Revival.
Just on Molde before, very briefly. They did have a wild game at the weekend. They beat Djurgården 4-2. They were 2-0 up against them. And they were kind of sleepwalking the match, really. Incredibly, Djurgården actually came back and got to 2-2, which would have been an incredible shock. And then who came on off the bench to score 2 goals in injury time was my man, David Datro Fofana. And he actually, there's 2 goals, managed to get me winning a bet on the Molde handicap. So Fofana is now very much in my good books. I even tweeted something out to go as far as say I might even apologize to him for ever doubting him. But maybe we're not quite at that level yet. But there's no doubt he certainly made an impact from the bench and got them the win, which keeps them 10 clear.
So good. David Datro Fofana, so good. They named him in our 10 to watch twice. And by the way, on the subject of 10 to watch, Michael Baidu in Sweden is one of my 10 to watch, and he's done incredibly well in recent weeks for Elfsborg. So I forgot to mention that in part 1, but my 10 to watch is looking very tasty. And Fofana in your 10 to watch 2 seasons running, can't believe he's done it. But he got you out of a pickle there. So maybe you do want to apologize to him. You know, this is your chance.
Do you know what? He got me out of a hole so much. If he keeps doing that, he's going to be in my 10 to watch for 3 straight seasons. So
no, that's not allowed. Let's move on. You've already broken all pod protocols and rules. You know what? We did have a few questions from last week, but I think I'm going to have to leave them now. Reed Tromso, actually, I'm going to ask you the question he asked at Reed Tromso from the 5th of September. He asked it just as we finished recording last week's show. He said, what are your thoughts on Patrick Berg and Marius Lauda returning to Glimt, which we'll brush over. But he says, what do you think has been key to August Mikkelsen's return to form lately? A fantastic player to watch in his day. And obviously, you just mentioned there Mikkelsen in that Tromso analysis. He's been looking quite good, hasn't he, Steve? Just briefly on him.
Yeah, I mean, he famously turned down Glimt in the summer transfer window. Said he said it would have been disrespectful to leave Tromso at that time. He's by far their best player. He won't be there next season. He's too good for them. And do you know what the key's been? And it's a shame now because he looks like he's got injured. I don't know how seriously. I was going to say the key is he stayed fit. I think he's always had some niggling injury problems. But this season, especially from middle of the summer, he's managed to string together a lot of games. In fact, usually he's subbed off in every game, but he's even had some matches where he's done the full 90 minutes, quite a lot. And I think that's a testament to him. So I do hope this recent injury that he picked up at half-time against them isn't too bad. I don't think it's shockingly bad. Might maybe miss 1 week and then it's the international break. So I think staying fit, he's got older, he's physically grown. So I think physically has been one of the big reasons why his form's improved.
Yeah, August Mikkelsen, 21 years old, so he's still got a bright future ahead of him. And David Datro Fofana, 19 years old, the most topsy-turvy relationship since, I think, Carl and Susan on Neighbours between Meatman Soccer and Datro Fofana. One week he's slamming him, 1 week he's praising him. I've never known anything like it. But let's move on. Kristiansund's revival.
Do you know what? I was in a Twitter space with Andy Martin on. We're talking about Eliteserien fantasy last week, and Andy Martin actually said he thinks that Kristiansund might survive. Now, I didn't laugh at him or anything for that suggestion.
Very noble of you.
At that stage, honestly, 13 points on the board they had at that stage, and I to be honest, I thought that was a bit far fetched from Andy at that stage. I mean, I just like he sounded so confident about it as well. Like, but do you know what? I think Andy might actually be onto something. So this is like a second apology here, on the podcast. What's going on? But do you know what? They've played really well recently, Kristiansund. 10 points from the last 4 games. It was a fantastic game against Vålerenga. Both teams really went for it, had a proper go. It was proper football. This really enjoyed this match. And they were rewarded for a late winner and they went absolutely wild. The management team, the fans, it was like a mini invasion at the end. And they're up to 16 points. They're only 6 behind Sandefjord. There's always a team that just completely plummets down the table. Like they don't win any of their last like 7 or 8 games, and it's always possible. And it's just identifying who it could be. And I think there's 3 candidates at this point in time: Sandefjord, HamKam, and Ålesund are probably the 3. And Sandefjord especially do concern me. And you know what? I'm actually for the first time I'm actually thinking Kristiansund might survive. Like, you couldn't, for me, feasibly think they were going to beat Vålerenga. You couldn't. The Vålerenga won 8 of the last 9 games. But for them to get a bonus 3 points there, it's a bit like sort of Varberg beating IE Core at the weekend in Sweden. Maybe even a bigger shock than that. But now that they won a sort of a game that they weren't expected to win, it's given them a chance. And if Sandefjord just keep not picking up points and Kristiansund sort of get a few more wins before the end of the season, I could see them getting that 14th place, which is the playoff spot, of course. HamKam have had a couple of defeats. Ålesund have only had 1 win in 10. So, yeah, I say Andy Martin might well be onto something there that Kristiansund might survive.
Do you know what? I've been looking at the just the last few weeks as well, and I realised that in the last 3 rounds, Steve, only 2 teams have kept a clean sheet. There's been 2 clean sheets in basically
every match has been over 2.5 goals, right? As well.
That's 24 games of football and 2 clean sheets.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
It's staggering, isn't it? It's like, I mean, underbackers are struggling in Norway right now, and you don't want to be backing both teams to score, no, do you?
Incredible stuff. But I mean, my boy is Christian. So what's behind this revival? It's not longer. They're 1 point. They've got 16 points. They're off the bottom.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it for me.
What is going on?
The lad
got 9 points in they've got 10 points in the last 4 games.
Faris Mumbanya, who was on loan somewhere, where I can't remember exactly where, but he came back at the end of July. And he was on the bench 3 times in a row, and then he started the last 4 games, and he scored something like 4 goals, and I think he's had 3 assists. This lad, he's given him a presence up front, and he got a goal in this game against Vålerenga. And I think they just lacked that focal point all year. I mean, Moses Moore got injured very early on in the campaign, done for the season. Of course, I don't think they've ever really been the same since they lost Pellegrino. And he gives them that physical focal point, but he's also quite technically good, and he doesn't lack for pace. So I think that's really helped them. And, just a little bit of rub of the green. Like, they've scored goals at the right times in games, and they haven't quite conceded them either at inopportune moments. So a few things sort of coming together. But now I'm suddenly looking at their fixtures, whereas before I was thinking, they've got no chance there. I'm thinking, hey, they might get something there. And, it's realistic. If they play like that, they can beat anyone, by the way. Vålerenga are in fantastic form. So I think they're not dead. First time I've ever said it or thought it, but Kristiansund Ball Club could still survive.
It's amazing. I think I thought you described them as done. Done and dusted. I thought it was. They were done. Ago. But no, I think that was the title race, actually, you said. But what we have to get in a listener question as well before we move on. I mean, that's, my boys, they might do it. This might be the story of the season, of any season, to be honest. I mean, that is incredible. They had 1 point after what? I think 12 games.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, when Andy was talking about this on the Spaces, they had 13 points. To me, when you're 9 points adrift with only 9 games left, that's just too much. But when you think about it, if you start winning games that you're not expected to win, and there's someone above you who just free falls, funny things can happen, can't they, in football? So, and let's be honest, their actual metrics, their XG metrics and stuff, expected points, is more sort of bottom end of mid-table, as you pointed out last week.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not actually doing, maybe this is the season to sort of evening itself out a little bit in terms of their the XG is kind of.
I'm kind of excited.
But let's move on. Yeah, I know you're excited.
I'm excited that if they pull this off. By the way, this is the one of the greatest ever escapes I've ever witnessed in football.
Well, it could happen. I mean, just going to read out one tweet from one of our most loyal supporters, Charlotte Patterson at Kirby Hazard. She says, "I'm certainly excited for Meatman Soccer to dissect this emphatic performance by Tromsø against Glimt, which you've just discussed as well. So, well done. And thanks a lot for your question there, Charlotte, or your comment there, Charlotte. It's always nice to hear from our listeners. I hope Steve has given a good, suitable analysis of that match and Kristiansund's potential to get out of it. The next game is Strømsgodset away, Kristiansund, and then they play at home against Rosenborg. So two massive games coming up. Let's move on before we wrap up the show. Well, we talked about Europe, but we've got to talk about Brann, haven't we, as well?
Yeah. And actually, I might as well continue this theme of apologies, actually, because
actually, this is like public announcement week.
So
who else have you got to apologise to?
They come in threes, Jonathan. This is it. Anyway, so I'm just trying to find my tweet. But earlier today, I looked at the game in the Obos. It was Brann against Grorud, and Brann only need to win the game, and they win the Obos. They're already promoted. And I couldn't believe the odds for this game. The handicap on Brann, it was nearly -4 Asian handicap. And the goal line was 4.75, nearly 5. I don't think I've ever seen such a massive goal line and a handicap in a league match anywhere in the world. I'm sure they've existed before, somewhere like the Maldives or whatever, but it was staggering. And I'm like, it's not right. And the value for me had to be with Grorud. And I kind of doubted Brann a bit that, they just kind of just want to get the job done and it might not really be up for it. In the end, you must surely get bored of beating teams every week all the time. So big. But how wrong was I? They were 6-0 up at half time. 6-0. And I couldn't believe it. And they only had it. I mean, they won 7-0 in the end. And what a way for them to win the Obos League A. And I think their fans are very excited about what's been going on there this season. They could be the Invincibles, the Brann Invincibles. Got 6 games left to keep their focus and avoid defeat. But they're getting like record points tallies, record goals probably. Won 21 out of 24 games. Huge congratulations to Brann. They've absolutely smashed it. And I think already we're all kind of looking forward to them coming back into the Eliteserien, where they rightly belong, and how well they can do. But I dared doubt them tonight. Well, not doubt them, but I thought they might not be quite as good as the odds would suggest, and they completely proved me wrong.
Massive congratulations to Brann, and also massive congratulations to Vegard Bjørget. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but he is currently top of our Nordic football podcast, Eliteserien Fantasy League. I know you talked about your Twitter space with Andy Martin, a massive FPL fantasy player in general. Hopefully we'll get him on the show in the coming weeks. But Vegard is top of the table with 1,490 points. Second place, Ronnie Ruff, East Acton All-Stars, 1,470. So the title race there is looking exciting. And I think that pretty much wraps it up. I mean, I'm just going to read the results from the weekend just gone because we haven't talked about every team in Norway. Far from it. But I'm just going to read some of the results. So you're up to date. Sandefjord 1, odd 3. Lillestrøm 2, Strømsgodset 1. Arlesen 1, Sarpsborg 3. Jerv 2, Molde 4, which we talked about. HamKam, shout out to Tom Dent 1. Viking 2, defeat for HamKam. Kristiansund, that massive win against Vålerenga 3-2. The quote-unquote Spurs of Norway, according to Meatman Soccer. Tromsø 3, Glimt 2 in the derby, the big Northern derby. Brilliant game, that. And Haugesund 2, Rosenborg 1. Steve, just briefly on Rosenborg, what's gone on there? That's a massive defeat, isn't it? And also my man Bruno Leite is back.
Yeah, actually, I briefly got to talk about the odd game because a lad called Dennis Jengar, in his first ever league start, according to my database anyway, scored 2 goals. 18-year-old scored 2 goals on his debut. And I know a few people were adding, he's listed as a defender in fantasy at 3.9 million. He actually played right wing. So he took his goals really well, I must say. Dead impressed with that young man. And as for Rosenborg, yeah, the last 2 away games have been disappointing. Losing at Tromsø and Haugesund, which are 2 places which they're not easy to go. But if you're really serious about sort of title challenging and medal challenging, you probably got to go there and get yourself, 4 points or at least 2. So disappointing for Rosenborg, but their squad is decimated. Injuries, it's not big enough anyway. They have got to really work on improving the depth of their squad over this winter. Otherwise, I don't think they're going to, improve that much because it's a lot of pressure on the certain guys who are fit. So, but well done to Haugesund. They found some form recently. And Leiter, I saw him when I saw him come back, and when I saw him on the bench for this game, I thought of you, Jonathan.
I do love that. Welcome back, Bruno Leiter. One of the few Haugesund games I think I've watched in the 5 years of this podcast, and he tore it up, and I liked him ever since. But yeah, there you go. I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week. Tune in next week, or tune in obviously on patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast if you want to support us. We do analysis and also weekend previews, also betting predictions. We're at 59.7% success rate this season in terms of predictions from 67 tips. So if you do fancy that side of the game, then and you're 18 or over 18, obviously, and gamble responsibly, then please do join us on that if you want to support us. Steve, this is the end of the Meat Man apology round. I think that's probably even the name of this show. But yeah, we'll be back. Some massive games, as I mentioned. Häcken Hammarby this weekend is a huge one in Sweden. And there's other big games, of course, in Norway, including Molde, Ålesund. In terms of the title, obviously, maybe it's done for them, but still need to keep a few wins to get over the line. Steve, just quickly, odd HamKam. I mean, are you worried a little bit? Just in a couple of sentences, are you worried about HamKam a little bit? They seem to be just sliding down the table a little bit now. They're in 13th, 1 point above the relegation playoff.
As I said, there's 3 teams I'm worried about getting in trouble, and that is, and HamKam are one of them 3, along with Sandefjord and Ålesund. Yeah. Do
you think this odd game is a sort of must win for HamKam?
Nah, it's not much win, but they need to look. They suffered that heartbreak against Sarpsborg, which has completely turned around Sarpsborg's form. By the way, they're confident again, and yes. To briefly answer, I'm worried about them 3 teams because I think those are the 3 that could, get themselves, in the mixer for the playoff spot, or even be in the sights of Kristiansund.
Yeah, and just at the top as well, there's a lot to be decided. I mean, Glimt are currently 3rd, and they're now 3 points behind Lillestrøm, and 1 point above Rosenborg. They could even fall out of the middle places in European football. So they need to sort of buck up their ideas a little bit as well. They've got a game, as we mentioned just now, this weekend against Haugesund at home, but of course they've got Europe before that. So that'll be all. So there's a lot to, this last 8 rounds is going to be a lot of goings on in Norway and Sweden. And of course, Denmark will have some content in coming weeks as well. But that'll be it for now. Thank you so much, Steve. You can find Steve on Twitter at MeatManSoccer. You can find me at JFFootball, JFFUTBOL. Always feel free to drop us a message or a question for the pod at Twitter at Nordic Foot Pod. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends. Give it a 5-star rating if you can. We always appreciate that. And subscribe on YouTube if you'd like. So loads of different things for you to do if you want to support us and enjoy this free content. But that'll be all from me. And Steve, thank you very much. Any closing remarks?
What we're going to have to call this episode, sorry seems to be the easiest word, right? But do follow us on the socials at MeatManSoccer, at JFFootball, at Nordic Footpod, and stay safe, take care, and see you next time. Have a good week, everyone.